Ezra Levant here. I've got breaking news from you. I'm actually in Lethbridge covering the trial of the Coots 4, the two remaining members of it, when on my phone I get an email from the Federal Court of Canada. They've issued a ruling in our landmark case, Rebel News versus David Lametti. You might recall that a couple of weeks ago we noticed that David Lametti had pressed delete on his Twitter account. Who's David Lametti? You'll remember he's the disgraced former Trudeau Justice Minister who brought in the Emergencies Act 2 years ago, which was recently reviewed and ruled to be illegal and unconstitutional by the federal court. After that incredible ruling, Lametti resigned in disgrace and slinked off to some cushy private law firm. But on his way out the door, he clicked delete on his government records. I don't care what he does with his personal Twitter account, but this was a government, civil service run government property. It would be like torching everything in the filing cabinet. That's not yours to do. And more to the point, victims of the Emergencies Act, people who had their bank accounts seized, they are now suing the government for the illegal and unconstitutional treatment at the hands of Lametti. How much clearer could it be that Lametti was trying to destroy evidence as he sneaked out the back door? So Rebel News and myself went to court on an emergency basis. No one else in the country did. Everyone was watching this. I don't know, is it a crime? It's against the law, certainly, to delete public records. Everyone was watching it in slow motion. We jumped in and filed an emergency injunction. Our lawyers worked all weekend, and we had a hearing and then another hearing, and then the final 4-hour hearing in the matter, where Lametti had 5 lawyers paid for by taxpayers, was held by no one less than the Chief Justice of the Federal Court of Canada, the big man himself. And when I saw that, I thought, either they're bringing in the top man, because if you're going to spank a justice minister, you'd better have your most senior judge do it. Or I thought, yikes, they're bringing in a buddy of Lametti's just to, finesse this whole thing. I didn't quite know which way it would go. Anyways, I just got the email of the ruling, and we're going to post it all at stopthecoverup.com. That's a special website we made with all our news on the Lametti suit. And I'd say it's a mixed bag. We wanted the court to spank Lametti. We wanted the court to say, you were caught red-handed. You were deleting records contrary to the law. We got you. We wanted the courts to say that, but they wouldn't. What they did do was a half win, I guess. Instead of ordering Lametti and issuing a court order that requires those records to be preserved, the court did 2 things. Number one, it ordered Lametti to file with the court an undertaking, as it's called, which is sort of like a lawyer's professional promise not to meddle with those records. So, I don't know, it's like a pinky swear, but for lawyers. I much rather would have had a court order, but the court is ordering him to make a pinky swear promise. I'd call that a half win. The other win that we got, which would not have happened were it not for our lawsuit, is that Lametti is required to transfer his Twitter account to the library and archives for them to handle. Now, that still makes me nervous, because who runs library and archives? Well, Trudeau does. And I think they're just handing it to someone who's going to delete the records that Lametti wants deleted. That said, we managed to get those 2 things. And most importantly, as soon as we filed the lawsuit against Lametti, he reactivated his Twitter account that would have been deleted. I read the ruling, and you can read it at stopthecoverup.com. And the judge said 2 things that I think were absolutely wrong. And frankly, one of them was a little bit embarrassing. The first thing the judge said is that there's no proof that there would be irreparable harm if no order was issued. Well, of course, the irreparable harm is once those records are deleted, they can never be got back. And there are people suing Lametti for his atrocious and unconstitutional conduct. If those records are gone, they're gone. That's the irreparable harm that would come. So I think the judge missed that one. But the second point is, I think, a little bit embarrassing. Of course, Twitter archives, if you have Twitter, you have every single tweet you've ever made, every single private communication called a direct message, every single interaction, everything. But there's a free website on the internet called the Wayback Machine, which takes sort of snapshots at random times of the web. And it's irregular and it's owned by a private entity. It's not a government thing. It just takes snapshots of the web, and it's useful for looking up what things looked like 10 years ago. You could see, for example, what Facebook looked like 10 years ago. It's sort of interesting. The judge said that Wayback Machine is pretty good. So even if Lametti did destroy government documents, well, there are lots of snapshots of what his Twitter account looked like. I maybe that's what a 70-year-old man thinks of the internet, and no disrespect, I'm not too far away from 70 years old myself, but maybe there's a problem when you're having an internet case, a Twitter case, and the judge has never used Twitter, as he admitted in the ruling, and he actually thinks that some random website taking pictures of a government's Twitter account is the same as preserving records. I actually thought that was sort of embarrassing for the Chief Justice to say, or maybe it was sort of, oh, I'm just a caveman. I don't know about these high-tech things. I'm going to let the minister off. I don't know. I'm not thrilled with it, but I am thrilled with what we did. I'm thrilled that, unlike anyone else in the country, we jumped into action when we saw Lametti breaking the law, and he was breaking the law. It's against the law to delete government records, which he tacitly acknowledged by reviving his Twitter account after he pressed delete. We are the people who can take credit for getting him to make his pinky swear undertaking, and we are the people who made the judge order that Library and Archives take possession of the Twitter account. On the whole, I'd say the success here was 7 out of 10 in terms of actual results. However, the judge says because we didn't get a preservation order, which is what we wanted, we lost. And so he's asked us to pay the costs of the government. He hasn't said how much. That has to be haggled out. We have a decision to make. Do we appeal and try and get that formal preservation order? I'm not sure if it's worth it financially. There's going to be a little bit of a battle because those 5 government lawyers are going to demand that Rebel News pay their bills because we didn't get everything we want. I think that's atrocious, and we'll have to see if we can convince them otherwise. But I guess how I would end this is that was a very Rebel moment. We cover the news, we do journalism, and we saw a disgraced liberal trying to sneak out the door and destroy records on his way out, the modern version of a paper shredder. We leapt into action with the support of you, our viewers. We crowdfunded Chad Williamson and Scott Nickel, 2 great freedom-oriented lawyers who rushed to court and did a great job representing freedom and the rights of the little guy. And in the end, although I think there's a lot of flaws in this ruling, and I think the judge actually made some embarrassing errors, in the end, we got the court to order him to make an undertaking not to meddle with these records, and he has to file that undertaking within 7 days. And Library and Archives will take hold of the records, not himself. So on the whole, I'd call it a win. And none of it would have been possible without you. To see the ruling yourself, go to stopthecoverup.com.